Welcome to The Explainer. Have you noticed how AI is suddenly integrated into literally every single app on your phone right now? Well, behind all that everyday magic is the absolute powerhouse of the AI memory market, SK Hynix. Today, we're going to see exactly how their market leadership holds up against a rapidly shifting global landscape. Specifically, we need to talk about whether the recent massive Chinese AI and memory boom is actually a legitimate threat to the undisputed king of memory. Because July 2026 brought two absolute shockwaves to the tech world. First, we saw the official release of DeepSeek's hyper-efficient v4.0 AI model, which completely rewrote the rules on computing power, aggressively competing with the big players like GPT on price. Second, the Chinese memory maker CXMT launched a monumental IPO on the Shanghai stock market, instantly rocketing to the #1 spot in market capitalization. With these dual threats, extreme software efficiency and massive hardware funding pouring out of China, we have to ask the multi-billion-dollar question. Is SK Hynix's dominance finally in real danger? To answer that, we're going to run a stress test on SK Hynix across 4 key areas: the DeepSeek risk, the CXMT risk, the Samsung rivalry, and finally, the moat. Let's dive right into Section 1, the DeepSeek risk. Now, initially, there was this massive wave of market fear. The logic was, if AI becomes incredibly efficient, companies simply won't need to buy as much hardware, right? And look at how DeepSeek actually achieved this extreme efficiency with v4.0. They built this gigantic model with 1.6 trillion total parameters, but during actual inference, when the AI is actively thinking and generating text for you, only 49 billion of those parameters are actually active. By using a highly advanced hybrid architecture, they managed to reduce the compute power needed per token down to just 27% of previous levels. It's so efficient and so stable as a commercial product that they've even introduced peak time daytime pricing. So if the software is getting this incredibly efficient, does that mean hardware sales are going to plummet? Actually, no, not at all. The crucial concept here is something called Jevons paradox. This is a classic economic theory where increased efficiency in using a resource actually leads to a massive explosion in the total consumption of that resource. Think of it like adding extra lanes to a highway to reduce traffic, only to find that it encourages so many new drivers to commute that traffic actually gets worse. Because the cost to run AI has just plummeted, it can now be integrated into literally every single industry. AI agents aren't just answering a single prompt anymore. They're working in the background, constantly thinking and searching hundreds of times. And that requires a colossal overall increase in hardware. We're watching this play out in real time because running these models is now so cheap. Massive US cloud providers, we're talking AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, are mass deploying this highly efficient tech. DeepSeek uses this brilliant memory compression technology called MLA, or multi-head latent attention, which reduces the memory needed for an AI conversation by over 90%. When these cloud giants pair that MLA tech with ultra-high-end NVIDIA H100 and B200 chips, the speed and the user density per server just go through the roof. This drastically lowers API costs, it makes AI ubiquitous, and it completely explodes the sheer volume of inference servers needed globally. But here's the catch. This massive demand for AI inference requires incredible amounts of general memory alongside those specialized chips. You just can't run a commercial inference server on high bandwidth memory, or HBM, alone. You need vast amounts of high-capacity general DRAM to make it cost-efficient. And this is exactly why SK Hynix is aggressively expanding their cutting-edge 1C general DRAM capacity by an astonishing 8.9 times by the end of 2026. They are scaling up from 20,000 wafers a month to a staggering 190,000. They absolutely saw this inference boom coming, and they're capitalizing on it perfectly. All right, let's move on to Section 2, the CXMT risk. So if the highly efficient software isn't hurting SK Hynix, what about a heavily funded Chinese competitor making their own chips? At first glance, honestly, CXMT looks absolutely terrifying. Just look at these milestones from July 26 alone. They achieved mass production of next-generation DDR5 and mobile LPDDR5. They boldly announced they were entering the AI memory market by initiating HBM3 development. And on July 27th, their IPO on the Shanghai stock market surged 465% on day one. They raised up to 14 trillion won to dump directly into HBM and DRAM development, instantly becoming China's #1 company by market cap. But take a breath and look at the reality of the technology gap. The whole picture changes.
CXMT might have DDR5, sure, but it is not in the same tier. SK Hynix is already manufacturing on the 6th generation 10 nanometer class, the 1C node. CXMT is stuck at the 3rd generation 1Z node, which is somewhere around 16 to 17 nanometers. In the silicon world, that physically smaller architecture means drastically better performance and efficiency for SK Hynix, giving them a rock-solid 3-year tech lead in general DRAM. And in AI memory, the gap is even wider. SK Hynix is rolling out 6th generation HBM4 in 2026, while CXMT is literally still just sample testing HBM3. Because the packaging for HBM is so insanely complex, industry experts estimate CXMT is actually a full 5 years behind here.
And that tech gap creates a very strict market segmentation. Yeah, CXMT's massive 14 trillion won war chest will absolutely let them pump out volume and crash prices, but that impact is almost entirely isolated to the low-end legacy market. They'll be supplying Chinese domestic brands like Huawei and Xiaomi for budget PCs and smartphones. Meanwhile, SK Hynix remains completely insulated in the ultra-profitable, high-end AI data center space, supplying heavyweights like NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, and OpenAI. The core profit engine of the entire memory market has shifted to this high-end infrastructure, which means CXMT's budget pricing doesn't structurally damage SK Hynix's bottom line whatsoever.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Samsung rivalry.
Okay, so the Chinese software and hardware threats aren't breaking the moat, but what about SK Hynix's fierce domestic rival right next door, Samsung? Let's take a look at the supply allocation for NVIDIA's highly anticipated next-generation Rubin chips. SK Hynix has confidently secured that coveted #1 supplier status, locking down over half the orders at roughly 55%. Samsung, on the other hand, is trailing behind at about 25%, finding themselves uncomfortably close to Micron's 20% share. So why the gap? It all boils down to a massive divergence in their yield strategies. This is the core operational difference right now. Because Samsung is struggling with lower HBM yields, meaning they have more defective chips coming off the line, they're kind of trapped. To meet their HBM volume promises, they actually have to sacrifice their general DRAM wafer capacity just to make up for those defects. They're literally losing out on the lucrative general DRAM market just to fix their HBM problem. SK Hynix, conversely, has highly stable HBM yields. That stability gives them the breathing room to comfortably expand both their HBM production and that incredibly profitable 1C general DRAM we talked about earlier. They're effectively dominating both sides of the premium market at the exact same time. And that leads us perfectly into Section 4, the moat. When you combine the massive explosion of AI inference demand, a very safe distance from budget competitors, and a clear operational lead over your primary rival, you get this number. A staggering 76% profit margin. This is the ultimate hallmark of the winner in the AI infrastructure era, fueled by an ironclad alliance with NVIDIA and vastly superior manufacturing yields. The conclusion we can draw from all of this is crystal clear. Despite the flashy headlines about massive Chinese IPOs and hyper-efficient new AI models, the SK Hynix mode remains entirely unbroken. The high-end AI infrastructure market, which, again, drives all the real profit in the memory sector right now, is structurally secure for them for at least the next 1 to 2 years. As long as this incredibly deep advantage of stability, high yields, and premium market capture holds up, SK Hynix simply remains untouched. So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Given this seemingly impenetrable technological lead today, who will actually step up to truly challenge this profit machine in the future? Will it be a reorganized and hungry Samsung, a surprisingly fast technological breakthrough from CXMT, or maybe an entirely new paradigm we haven't even seen yet? Whatever happens, keep your eyes on those manufacturing yields because that is where the real battle is being fought. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.